Hello YouTube, Great RJ1 here, and today I'm back with another video. You may have saw me do a community post saying that I'm actually interested on doing railway series like headcanons or something like that for characters that never appeared in the railway series, which will also be including characters from the reboot. And what I'm planning to do is give you my railway series headcanon of these characters in a quick video first, then I'll go over to doing their stories. I think that would be a good idea, then you're sort of familiar and you're not all confused. This isn't the entire story of them, but this is going to be the main key parts of their stories. So this today will be about Sandy. If you don't know who Sandy is, she was an engine introduced in season 25 of Thomas and Friends, or more better known as the reboot, or All Engines Go. Now I'm going to have a lot of her personality kept in this kind of version of her, where she's very eager to help her friends and stuff like that, but she's also very happy and like a bouncy character, you could say. So I'm keeping that sort of personality with her as much as I can, but there will be a lot of times where it's not really matching and she's more determined in this version of it. So Sandy has arrived, so she will keep basically her same design, but she will be a diesel. She will have the original design as she has in the reboots, but more realistic, and she will have these like wheel connector things instead of the wheels being completely exposed, near so it explodes. But yeah, that's mainly only the differences. Anyway, she has the entire reason she has been bought. Now we have to go into a little bit before a little bit of a headcanon to explain her arrival. So since Stuck has now become the station pilot at Knapford, Percy has been sent to work on the harbour line, and Sandy has been brought to be one of the cranes there, pretty much. Now keep in mind, she will not have like that hook thing she has at the front of her like in the reboot. This will be like compatible things so they can switch it all out like that. Hang on. Okay, there we go. But yeah, she's basically brought to help out at the harbour. Now she has a very keen liking to sand, as she does in the reboot. Now I have got... I've lost what I was going to say. Let's just get into the headcanon, shall we? I've forgotten what I was going to say. Anyway, if this was in the TV series, she would have been sent to work at Brendan Docks with Salty, Porter and Cranky, so just saying that. Anyway, she has been sent to the harbour to help out at the harbour. Percy would be morely working around the seaside at this point, helping out around the harbour and the seaside, basically being like the main engine that works there, instead of like Salty or Porter, for just as examples. And this is basically a little picture I did on her, basically unloading some pipes from Percy's flatbed. So as you can see, these are the hooks she has, and they're actually put inside it, and these can be changed. These are meant to be chains, but I couldn't be bothered to do all zigzaggy things, so I just put it as lines. But they are meant to be chains, so I have tried to put as much realism into a design as I can without making it all too weird. So that's, and as you can see, she's unloading pipes. She's basically a crane that can move on herself, by herself, like Harvey. But she can, but the hooks are put in front of her, and she has basically, you could say, increased strength on pulling power when it comes to her front hooks, due to her having 2 of them instead of just 1 like Harvey. So she helps out at the docks, and well, not the docks but the harbour, and does basically all the work there as much as she can, like unloading stuff, loading stuff onto the flatbeds, all that kind of stuff. It's morely like your crane, where it's like a crane. She's like a crane at this point that goes and helps engines and unloads things, basically like a crane moving by herself that doesn't even have a crane attached to her basically. So she's sort of like that kind of character. So in the last picture you saw, basically she was loading pipes onto Percy's flatbeds, and eventually Percy would have gone off over to Thomas's branch line, where he derailed at Bulgee's Bridge, and would eventually earn the name for Percy as Percy's Unlucky Bridge, which Percy would not take a keen liking to, but he would eventually get over it. However, during the once Percy had crashed, Sandy has been informed, so she raced out the harbour over to Bulgee's Bridge, or shall I say Percy's Unlucky Bridge, to go and help him. And she used her basically hooks to re-rail Percy, and she will usually she just puts the hooks on the buffers of the engine, as then she can easily put them and pull them back up onto the rails. And eventually, once she re-railed Percy and the rolling stock, they went back to the harbour. Percy was sent to the works for some repairs, and yeah, the duck had been sent to work at the harbour for a bit until Percy was able to return, then he went back over to be a pilot at Knapford. However, Sandy this is where she got a little bit more bossy. She was very pleased on saving Percy from a crash and re-railing her, which to her thought it was very special that not many engines have done, failing to realise that it's something that which happens not all the time, but can happen, and it does get solved by the engines as well. But at that time she did not know that, and was quite boastful with it. Eventually she did realise this. Now she has a very unique feature. So you know how Flynn is in Day of the Diesels, where he can go on roads and rails? I sort of implemented that kind of feature to Sandy. She can't go from roads to rails, but she can go from standard gauge tracks to narrow gauge tracks. And because of her size in all engines go, I'd have that about be her size for this. So she's a very small character, which would allow her to basically go on both gauges. So there was some tracks installed near the Scarlowry Railway sheds when she arrived. So if she ever had to go onto the Scarlowry Railway, she just had to go on those tracks, and the tracks were moved with her wheels. And as her wheels were narrow, the tracks would come with her. Not the entire piece of tracks, otherwise all the engines on the standard gauge railway would derail. And then the same with the miniature railway, they'd just slip onto the sleepers, but parts of the track, and then she'd be able to run on the narrow gauge rails, But yeah, that's a little feature I gave her. So she became more like an engine where she is more useful at the harbour, but can be used for certain crashes if needed. Eventually, she was no longer needed at the harbour, sadly, and was sent to the works, and if it was in the TV series' case, this would have been the steamworks. She originally would have had her hooks replaced with like robotic arms, but they were very complicated to get working. And worst of all, due to her size, when she had to bring in parts, she had to take very small trains. Due to her small size and strength, she was not that strong and was more useful for unloading and loading parts on and off things. It ended up getting to the point where they completely got rid of her robot arms and ended up putting on a front coupler, as you can see here. This, however, was only for when she was in the steamworks, and eventually she was sold off and no one wanted it, so she's just put on a siding. Her coupling was removed and would have been a new crane would have began coming to help out at the works, along with the works diesel. Now if this was in the television series, this would have been Kevin and Victor. Eventually she was put in at a siding near Knapford or Tidmouth, whichever one you want to say it as. I'm going to say near Tidmouth. So she was put on a siding at Tidmouth, and she didn't really get used. Not for a long time, at least a decade or so, because that's how long she had been waiting on the siding to get used. And she sort of just became forgotten, more as a like one of those people you'd always see it like every single day, and then you just for some reason end up forgetting about it because you're busy with other stuff or something like that, sort of like that. And she really got forgotten. Well, she did get some, well, at the beginning of the decade of her waiting on the sidings on Thomas's branch line, Thomas, Percy, Toby, all those engines that works on there, did say hello to her. They sort of, after about maybe 5 or so years, began to forget about her, and she tried to say hello to them, but she always tried it just as they were about to leave the station, as she was not familiar with their timetables. Eventually, she was put back into working order, and the entire reason for this was because there was a fire going on at the Scarlowy Railway, and all the other engines were busy doing their jobs at the time, so no engines on the Scarlowy Railway could help. And if this was in the TV series, this fire and crash would have been happening at the Blue Mountain Quarry, I'm pretty sure, but this is meant to be railway series, so it's going to be happening at the winch. And basically only Sandy was able to go on the narrow gauge rails and help at the time. So she was immediately put back into working order and was raced off to the Scarlowy Railway to help out at the winch. When she finally arrived, she saw Rusty having been derailed along with his trucks, and there was a fire happening, and it was going up by truck. Eventually Sandy reached him and got close enough and began to use her hooks to pull Rusty back onto the rails, of course not pulling the trucks as they were beginning to catch fire. she eventually finally got Rusty back on the rails just before the truck he was coupled to catch fire. Eventually, she basically got Rusty out of danger, and she helped out on the Scarlet Railway when the help was needed from then on, since of course she could go on both gauges. After the rescue of Rusty, she ended up getting brought by the Social Search and Rescue Service, basically, or whatever it was in the railway series, and would basically begin to help out engines that had crashes or that were in danger majorly or something like that. Basically things like that. And that's sort of what Sandy did for at least a good 5 years. Eventually, she decided to retire from doing the rescue searching, as it was not something she always wanted to do. She instead went over to working on Thomas's branch line, however having to pull very small loads and very light-weighted loads, and her main train would often be pulling 1 tanker of milk, as the other loads would usually be too heavy for her. While she could handle some of the loads, it was usually too heavy for her to handle, not giving her a good time when pulling other loads that weren't the milk train. She also worked at the clay pits and worked there even more when slate was needed desperately on the island, and had quite a good some encounters with Bill and Ben, which did cause trouble for her, but that will be more be explored in the railway series sort of books thing I'll be doing with her. She eventually told Sir Topham Hatt that she wanted to go and work on the Little Western with Duck and Oliver, since it was nearby the seaside, and she thought that would help her quite well, not just in performance but also in her place on the railway. Sir Topham Hatt was not fully on board with it to begin with, as he thought that getting rid of an engine from Thomas's branch line may affect the branch line too much, but he accepted to do it, and it did not affect Thomas's branch line too much, and she had 4 special coaches made for her, and with the entire line of them, they only weighed 1 Tismouth milk tanker that she used to pull on Thomas's branch line, and the passengers only made it go up to the milk tanker and brake van, making it very light and easy for Sandy to pull. The coaches were also coloured after her, and she still works on the Little Western to this day. So that's sort of my bit of railway series headcanon for her, you could say. I think this would work quite well for her. Now, this is only just basically the stage rates. You find out mainly the key parts that will bring the story all together, but I am yet to basically bring up to make the actual book themed of it, so I will end up doing that. But I think this version of Sandy works much better for the railway series than it would do if her all engines to go version would. As in it, she has a lot of moments where she's not that happy, but at the same time she has a lot of moments where she's really happy and got that nice bouncy personality. But in the end, she's just a normal engine that just wants to do what a normal engine wants to. She went from being a all happy young bouncy engine to eventually just becoming like that old wise like grandparent that will be there when you need them. That's sort of like her developments. She has a lot of drastic events happen for this sort of like headcanon, you could say, and they all just add up to her storyline. She has a ton of events happen, but they only happened because it fitted with the story, and I think it fits with the Railway series. And the way I tried to alter her design, while I get the robot arms were not that realistic, they were quite faulty. They didn't work half the time, and they required another person just to make them work as well. So it was an experiment that was not successful when it came to the robot arms, which is why she also had that front coupling put onto it at the time of the works, because of how basically little work she could be able to do there, which is why she only worked there for about 5 months. Yeah, that's actually how long she worked there, 5 months, before no longer working there, because that's how much of she couldn't be used there. Because one, she could barely pull any of the trains, she really struggled with them, and two, she was more useful for like bringing like something from the first location to the second, as shown by her most commonly used feature that's not part of a normal engine, her hooks. So yeah, now tell me which character you want me to do next. I want you to get Sandy out of the way. One, because she's an all engines go character, and it'd be really interesting to have her put into the like main series in like a version where she's like this. And I've not really seen people do a headcanon for Sandy from what I was able to find and I only looked at the top one because it was, yeah, I didn't scroll down because there was something that captured my eye when I searched it up. But when it comes to Sandy, I think she has a lot of character potential outside of all engines go. She doesn't have to be that all happy bouncy character throughout the entire series. She could like get older and be just a kind old engine like Edward and Toby. Now I have had a idea for an Adventures of Sodo episode did pop up, speaking of Toby, and that's one where Edward is not able to work at the clay pits for a day or so, and Toby has been sent to work there with Bill and Ben, and he's had to be like Edward. I had that thought come up to me today, so so it's not confirmed, but I'm probably going to make that episode. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this bit of a headcanon for Sandy. Forgot her name for a second, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully gets out basically the like proper stories out soon, and I'm really looking forward to making them. I'll probably just have it be like one screen, and just any pictures that go onto that story I've put in here will probably get used, but only the pictures put in here. Anyways, hope you guys enjoy this video, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.